So a very warm welcome to the next edition of our LEH dialogue. A little bit about LEH and why we do these dialogues. So I want to set up a kind of context before we get into the conversation with Grace, who's with us today as our next guest in the LEH dialogues. So when we launched Leadership at Humanity, May of 2021, we wanted our purpose of igniting or reigniting humanity in business leadership as front and center of the guiding light we wanted to pull us through with our mission. And one of the building blocks of that was to continue the conversation or expand the conversation. So I wanted to reset the narrative. That's what we defined the goal as, that where leading with humanity becomes cool. Now, to do that, we needed leaders who could inspire us, or thought leaders or influencers who have life stories, who can come in and join us in these dialogue sessions to be our inspiration and give us that fuel, which will be required to make this conversation even broader. So we have done probably about 10, 11 LEH dialogues so far. We are hosting these dialogues or the recordings of these dialogues on our website. If you have not watched the previous ones, you can access all those there. We've been very fortunate to have leaders like Grace, who we were able to bring in from different walks of life, by the way, not only business leaders, who have these inspirational life stories, which make this whole mission worth living for us. Besides this, we also run our leadership journeys, which probably some of you know and track. We do pro bono mentoring program for those people who need help and support but can't access good quality guidance. And then we run university programs which allow us to start talking about this narrative or talking about humanity in leadership at the early stages as people start even forming their opinions about leadership. So today, our focus is on Grace. And I want to take not more than probably a couple of minutes or maybe 3 minutes. Okay, we have a young guest too on the call, which is wonderful. So I want to take a couple of minutes to just introduce or provide my perspective on Grace. And of course, then I'm going to invite Grace to talk a bit more about that. But let's see how the day is stacked today. So if you move to the next slide. This is what we are going to do in about 5 minutes. I'm going to hand it over, or a couple of minutes, I'm going to hand it over to Grace. And then Grace, we will be requesting her to introduce herself and share her life story in her words. And then as our format, those of you who've been part of these LEH dialogue sessions in the past, we spend about 15-20 minutes where I will engage Grace in a conversation, in a dialogue. And then last about 15 to 20 minutes are for the Q&A. So any questions you may have for Grace, please feel free to ask. I would also suggest use the dialogue box function in your Zoom. So if you have questions you want to bring up as you hear Grace talk about her journey, her life story, keep those questions coming in the dialogue box, and Sophia will help me to pull those together to make sure that those get addressed. Or even during the conversation, I mean, it's not a watertight format. You feel there is something urgent you want to bring up with Grace, by all means, you can bring it up at any moment. As you've already done, keep your mics on mute, but at any moment you have a question, you want to raise your hand, you can bring up your question. Yojana, great to see you on the conversation. So with that, let me share my perspective. You know, Grace is a multifaceted personality. I'm sure she's touched so many lives during her short journey so far. I'm one of those. I happened to meet Grace about, I would say 10 years back. She was part of my extended team in Asia, and then we started to work together. So my memories of Grace, I think Grace, I met you first time in Istanbul. There was this big Mondelez launch meeting, and I was still not in the company. I was invited to join that, that whatever gathering, and I got to spend a bit of time with you. My early memories of Grace are someone who's always smiling. So any conversation, any business meeting, serious discussion, there was one smiling face in the room around the table, and that was Grace. My other memory of Grace is someone who always came with a solution. So she came with a problem. I never had a chance where I could discover something. Grace will come with, this is a situation, but this is what we can do, always, without fail. Every single conversation with Grace was about how do we make it work versus this is an issue. And then third, when I actually started to get to know Grace, and very briefly, she became actually part of my very close team. We were going through a massive transformation. Grace, your ability to bring that attitude which inspires others. She would walk into the room and lift the entire room with her energy when people were down and out and kind of thinking of what is going wrong and what can be fixed, or detached. And she would walk in with this very, very positive, infectious energy. And I kind of regretted, I remember when Grace decided and called me that I'm going to move on. I really felt kind of an important part of me was going away, but that was part of her growth, her own journey. And then I've been very closely tracking or following Grace's growth. And it's just phenomenal how she came from the Philippines. I don't know a lot of her background, but now I get to know about that. She comes from the Philippines, then moved to China. Then from China, she moved to Malaysia, then Malaysia to Singapore, then to Thailand, multiple roles, in this process, going from a very specific kind of a rewards leader when I came to know about our off Grace, to HR leader, broader HR leader, to a business leader now who's very successfully leading one of the top, food retail organizations across Asia. It's just inspirational, even from a distance, Grace. Even if we don't speak, I don't feel I'm too far away, because you just watching you, what you're doing, and especially the way you face some serious life challenges and how did you come out of it, is a story which personally wakes me up every morning and gives me a reason to be positive. So without further details on Grace, I will be inviting Grace, our next guest, to share a bit about her. Over to you, Grace.
Thanks, Atul. That's a very generous introduction, and really honored to be invited today and to share my story. And I hope I can learn from others as well. So I would say if you feel you want to share anything and you can relate to my story, you want to comment and not just ask questions, please use the chat box. And thanks everyone. I know it's a Saturday. It might be morning, afternoon, or evening in your time. And I really appreciate you for showing up today. I was worried no one will show up. It will just be you, me, Atul, and Sophia. But really appreciate you guys and happy Diwali to everyone who's celebrating. My husband and I are celebrating as well. So I thought I structured my sharing today before we have our dialogue later on, a bit of sharing of chapters of my life. First is my a chapter in my life which is about my family and childhood, which I think is really important in terms of how it shaped my values and the person I am right now. And the second is how I continue to live and lead these values as I continue my journey, whether at work or personal life. And third is share a bit of how I overcome some adversities in life. So this is what I will cover today. And at each point, I will pause. So in case you have any question, I would encourage you so that it would be more dynamic. I don't feel alone presenting today. So if we go to the next slide. So I was born and raised in Manila, Philippines. I'm second among four children. We have a very close family relationship, and you can see there my family. We're the family who likes to say "I love you" to each other, and we kiss each other as well. So we are those family who likes to kiss and hug, and we just grew up very close. So we can see there's a lot of food there. My whole family are foodie, so most of our gatherings and picture together involves a lot of food. So my whole family are all back in the Philippines. I'm the only child who left the country, and it's good that I left the country. Otherwise, I will not meet Nevash, who you can see on your right side. Nevash is not just my husband. I consider him also my best friend who has traveled with me in different countries and supported me at work as well. We've known each other for 10 years and have been married for 7 years. I mentioned about Nevash being my best friend, but I also considered him as my wellness conscience at home. So he used to be a writer, and he completely moved to a new industry, which is on fitness industry. So he's my wellness conscience at home who reminds me about fitness, good diet, and importance of good sleep. So I feel like I'm much healthier marrying Nevash. So really blessed blessed about that. So if we go to the third slide on my, just sharing a bit about my childhood and inspiration. I think my childhood is mix of, fun memories, and there were also some, challenging and some sad stories as well. So when I was young, I enjoyed playing as a kid with my brother. We always want to go out. So I'm the one who's very active, and I like physical activities. I didn't play a lot like doll. I like running around and playing traditional Filipino games, which are all quite physical. So I tend to actually play games with a lot of boys who are friends of my brother, and we hang out together during that time. And most of my childhood, my dad was working as in a cruise ship as a seaman. So most of the time, my dad was away. He was abroad. So we are with my mom. My mom has been guiding us when during our childhood. One thing though, when my dad was around, so my dad had this drinking problem, and because of that drinking problem, he lost his job multiple times, and that caused us, tension in the family, some financial problem, psychological, I would say, and emotional problem as well. So as early as 7 years old, my brother and I started finding ways to earn money because sometimes, we don't know whether we have, we can buy snacks at home in the school, or there's a breakfast the following day. And I remember there were even times my brother and I will go to our neighbor and our neighbor will feed us breakfast because we really don't have money. So probably those were the times that my dad, lost his job, and yeah, we're struggling during that time. So I remember my brother and I have fun ways of earning money. So you can see some jeepneys in your screen here. So my brother and I would go on the street and wait for jeepneys to park. And what we will do is we will approach the drivers and then ask them and offer our service to clean their jeepney. I'm the cleaner inside the jeepney who would sweep the floor and clean and remove the dust. My brother would be cleaning the jeepney from the outside. So, we were having fun doing that. And for me, is that as a child, I didn't feel it was bad or anything, but I feel like, oh, I'm earning money. This is good for me. So that was, I thought, like, as early as 7 years old, we're earning money, so we can already run business during that time. So my mom has been, our guide growing up. She's kind, caring, and she had big dreams for us. Both my mom and dad actually didn't finish college. So my mom was, full-time housewife supporting us and teaching us. She's also like our tutor at home, and always reminded us the importance of education. So at a young age, I learned, because of some struggles at home that we have, I learned how to compartmentalize things when I go to school. Because my mom would always tell us, when you go to school, don't think about the problems at home. Just focus on studying, have fun, be active on the activities in the school. Don't think about the problems at home. So I think from that age, I learned already how to be present where I am and not think about other things. So when I'm at home, then my presence would be, helping my mom in terms of doing household chores and also having fun and, playing with my brother. So that's how we grew up. And I would say my brother and I did very well. So both of us, got scholarship. from grade school, high school, even to college. And both of us got some achievements on our own, being valedictorian in our class, and yeah, have our own successes as well. So before I continue, I don't know whether anyone has any question or any comment. Okay. Otherwise, you can just send message later on. So I'm gonna move to the next slide. So I remember a conversation I had with my brother at young age. So my brother said to me, it's up to me and him to make our family lives better. And this stuck in my mind and made me believe that I have the power to make my life and others' lives better. From then, I know that I'm in charge of my life and who I will become. So I'm very clear. I will not be dependent financially to anyone. I will not be dependent of decisions in my life to anyone. I will make decisions for my own. So I'm very clear on that. And I never will play the victim card on any situation because I know I can do something about it. So this quote that you can see from Ralph Waldo resonates with me a lot. And I think this is really empowering in terms of how we view, who we want to be and who we want to become. So going through the next slide. So in my journey, it just became clear to me maybe 7 years ago what I really value in my life. Sometimes, right, like people will ask you, what's your purpose? And sometimes people realize that early in stage, in early stage in their life. Some people realize that later on, or some people have not realized that yet. So for me, like things that I value in my life, I think it becomes just, clearer to me 7 years ago. And it's all about learning and growing and the ability to help others and having fun. So maybe others would not say having fun really is your purpose and but what you value in life. But I think like that's important for me. For my sanity, I cannot just work hard and be serious and drive business. I need to have fun. So I was unconscious about this before, that these are my values and what drives me. But it has been my guiding my decisions and journey, whether in my career or personal life. So I live and work in different countries, learn about different roles, businesses, solve different problems, and learn about different culture. So I've always been the curious one, learning new experiences, whether at work or outside work. So for me, learning is a passion. So I have different ways of learning as well. I think, probably reading is not my really strength. I tried. I'm good in listening, so I prefer like a podcast or what. So I thought, oh, it's good that this one is popular tool now, and I think this video as well I can listen to. So that works for me. But I'm avid learner, and I like to try new things. I can tell you, it comes from learning new things at work to skateboarding. Um, I tried skateboarding. I also do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I'm quite curious and like, just like learn new things as well. On helping others, I think realizing the value of education and how it helped me. I'm also helping a community back in the Philippines for almost 17 years now. And I'm also have supported 4 students who graduated university. So I thought that, sometimes people talk about children and I don't have children, but I have 4 graduates already at my age at 43. So I feel proud about that. And I'm so happy because I'm seeing all these graduates, what they're doing is that they're giving back to the community and just helping other kids as well in their education. So that's something I'm passionate about. So I extended this work in the community as sponsor and advisor in YUM on our recipe for good. So what we try to do is we focus on issues related to education, hunger, and sustainability in Asia. And I work with this team on solving these problems. On having fun, people who work with me, like Atul, my family, my friends, and people around me know this. I enjoy life. I'm a kid at heart, and I like bringing joy to others. So I think it's something really important part of my life. If there's no joy or fun in what I'm doing, I'm not gonna do it for sure. So that's really important for me as part of my values. Like I want to do something that I will not be happy to do it. So if we go to the next slide, sometimes when you feel like things are going well and nothing will go wrong, and that's the time you will be shaken, and it can come in a very scary way. So just want to share with you, something that I've gone through, which is quite life threatening and also an eye-opening experience for me. So in December 2019, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I had my surgery a month after that in January 2021, and went for a month of radiation treatment last year. So definitely a life-turning event for me, but I thought it opened my eyes to see things differently as well. So I found a new courage, and I can tell you, I don't know what happened to me. I'm just thinking of things like I should be bold to do, and that I've never done before, or things to do that I have procrastinated for a long time. So probably last year and this year, I can tell you, I'm in my best shape in life, and I started running last year, and I still do now. I run at least 5 times a week, and I never run actually in my life before. So I think I'm better on my diet, and my doctor. I see my doctor every quarter, and he said my health is A+, and he said I want you to stay A+. And from an obese state to A+ for me is like it's a big kind of journey for me and achievement for myself, and I want to stay just healthy going through that difficult journey. And one cause of breast cancer is obesity, so I'm very mindful that I stay fit and stay healthy. So talking about new courage, I also asked for the job that I'm in right now, so I think I told mentioned that. So for those who know me, I've had long career in HR. So probably if people will talk about me, for sure they'll talk about the work that I've done in HR. So finally last year, also going after the treatment of cancer, I spoke my to my bosses, to the GMs in the business, and even to the global team. And I mentioned to them that if there would be opportunity or the job will be available, it was not available at the time. I want to raise my hand for a COO role. And that time I said it doesn't matter where it's based, because I'm always mobile. But I said, if it's available here in Asia, I think I prefer that because I know the business. So at least there's not much variables for me to deal with. So what happened is that I'm luckily people got promoted. The person in that role got promoted to the GM role, and I got the job. So I would say that's something again takes courage. I was asked actually 4 years ago, no, 3 years ago, to take this job. Like if I'm interested, and I can tell you, I actually said no. So I was 2 years in the job as head of HR for Asia, and in my heart and in my head, I feel like 2 years covering Asia is not enough, and I still want to continue as CPO for Asia that time for KFC. And I felt like last year, 4 years, in the job, I think I have a strong team. I also think the partnership with the franchisees that we have is stronger. And I think I'm ready. I'm ready to move on to a new challenge for myself. So that's another one. And in terms of conquering some of my fears, one thing that I've done as well is one fear that I have is public speaking. And for the last 2 years, I've put myself just out there to speak and share my experience and knowledge. And this is in my hopes to help others in my own little way. So that's I'm here. And thank you for listening. And I look forward to having conversations with all of you.
Wow, thanks so much, Grace. It's a fascinating story. I always thought I know a lot about you, but then just now, in last 10 minutes, I realized there is so much which has gone into making Grace who you are. I didn't know. So thanks for your transparency, your openness, and inspiring us with your own life journey. So I'm now going to get into a dialogue with you. I have a ton of questions I can't wait to ask and no more. But at the same time, I am going to request our audience, any questions you have for Grace, keep those coming in the dialogue box. So you can put those there. And as I go along, we will bring up those questions and make this dialogue even more enriching. So Grace, this story from cleaning jeepneys in Manila to being the chief operating officer of KFC in Asia is incredible. Inspiring is probably even a short word. Now, you made some bold choices in life, both, by the way, for your personal life as well as in your professional life. And you followed every choice with passion. You put yourself out there, and you went and you kind of tried and you saw how it worked out. So tell me what made you take those decisions or make those choices?
Yeah, I think Atul, right, with all those challenges that I've gone through, you can consider me as eternal optimist. I feel like everything, all these challenges are temporary. And I'm sure there's a fix on this one. So of course, when something like, for example, cancer happened to you, right? There would be emotions, I acknowledge that feeling that I have. I cried for a few days. But what happened though is when I discovered I have breast cancer, my family actually got COVID at the same time. So my focus actually shifted quickly to caring about others than, looking after myself. So sometimes my husband would say, sometimes I'm worried that you're not worried about yourself. Because for me, I'll go into a mode of like, yes, I'll acknowledge that, I feel bad about what happened. Then I would reflect. Then quickly I will go into what options do I have, and then go into action planning.
Yeah.
All the time, that's how I process. I acknowledge how I feel right now. And then I would reflect on that and go into what options do I have then, because I'm sure there's a fix on this and there's something I can do about it. So that has been my mindset.
It's amazing, Grace. So I'm going off track a little bit. Your story about your childhood was very moving for me. Parts of it I could personally relate to. Tell me those experiences early on, 7, 8-year-old kid, uh, going through the stress, the trauma, the fears, the anxiety, still picking up that courage to do something about it. How have those early childhood experiences shaped your journey? What influence did they have on your journey?
Yeah. I can tell you, Atu, even as a child, I'm already used to speaking up. I would tell my dad, I would talk to my dad when he's sober. So when he's not drunk, he wakes up in the morning, I would tell him what he did. Because sometimes he would pretend, nothing happened and all. So I feel like I was, quite mature. I'm mature at young age. And I think that it, I don't know whether it's good or bad, but for me, it's like maybe it worked for me that I am mature at young age, and I conquered that fear and I have that relationship with my dad. But eventually, I think maybe later part of the life of my dad. So my dad passed away in 2011, and because of drinking, he had liver cirrhosis. He actually reflected on that and asked forgiveness from all of us. But I thought like it impacted me definitely in some relationship, how I view relationship as well. So I was thinking like I'll never be my mom and stick to a guy like this. So there are things like you've seen, like you said, you will never want to experience. Therefore, in if I get married, it should not be like that, or I will not let this man treat me the way this man treated my mother. So there were learnings, but I think we made peace with my father before he passed away. We had, the past years before he passed away were very good memories for all of us. So we amended all the relationships, and it was I would say happy ending. Even my dad passed away. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's moving. Okay, so the next one, Grace, is about the fears, which we typically don't address, and you actually face those heads on. So, all of us going through our own journeys, careers, so on and so forth, we have anxieties, we have fears, but there is this stereotype that as leaders, you're not supposed to express your fears, you're not supposed to share your anxieties. So tell me, what were your strongest fears growing into the role you have grown into, your career and life journey, and how did you deal with those?
Yeah, I think I mentioned one at all, which is public speaking. And I felt like I'm very good and like I'm very engaging in one-on-one conversation or small group. But I never like the limelight or spotlight of a lot of people looking at me. So I think it's easier when you do it online, I would say. But there was, I cannot avoid that because as a leader, you will be put in that situation. So I thought like, I just practice all the time. And I can tell you, it needs also preparation. You cannot just trust that, I know this topic, but doesn't come naturally for me to be comfortable and present in a big audience. So I would do is I would prepare, and I would rehearse actually talking to myself. And my husband actually gave that, tip to me, like, when you practice, don't just practice in your head. You talk about it, whether you're sitting or standing, but you should articulate what you're gonna say or represent.
Yes.
And the other fear that I have, Atul, which is something personal, which is might be shocking for others, is that I'm scared being disabled. So I was telling my husband, like if at one point, so this is really gory details of that conversation. If at one point I'm paralyzed or I'm not mobile anymore and I'm not living really the life, I want you to pull the plug. I told him. He said, "Oh no, we're not having this conversation." I said, "Oh yes, we're having this conversation." Because for me, I don't want to be, burden to others, and I don't think it's living life for myself. So yeah, that is one fear that I have. I feel like, I'd rather die than be paralyzed and, be a burden to others. So yeah.
Wow. And everything you shared just now, Grace, makes you a real human. There is this stereotype of the senior leaders, how they should show up, and they don't have fears and they don't talk about it. I'm sure all of us had those fears or will have those fears. Difficult to bring it out. But if we don't do that, we don't know how to address those. So it's very well said. I have a great question from Yojana. Yojana, why don't you come off mute and ask this question?
Sure. Hi, Grace, and hi, Atul, and really inspiring to hear your story. So, Grace, I had a question on, as you transition from, a chief people officer to CEO, who were your biggest cheerleaders in this transition? And what was your mindset? Because this transition is huge. So, what was your personal state and mindset to really power through this transition?
Yeah. First, I thought about it, you know, what's the worst that can happen if I move to this role? It's really challenging. It's a big job, right? It's not something, probably I would say I experienced before. So I thought about it. What's the worst that can happen? I would lose the job. And I thought about it. That's fine. I can still live with that. But if I don't do this, I will never know if I can do it. So that was my mindset of like, what's the worst that can happen? Right? If I can manage that, that mindset of losing a job, I'm free from that fear. So I thought like, yeah, I can do this. This is not rocket science. And I think there's big component on people on leading this role. So I thought like that's my strength. Influencing and negotiating with franchises is my strength. So I look at the strengths that I have because sometimes, right, most women have this imposter syndrome. So we would look at list of 10 requirements. And if we have three or, four missing there, we will say we're not ready. But men would say like maybe I'm qualified. I have four, out of those 10 requirements, but I'm ready. I'm gonna do this job. So I thought like, I'll just be bold and get into this role. So the transition was not easy, I can tell you. And I thought like if it's too easy and I was in my comfort zone, I don't think I'm learning anything. I can tell you the first half of the year is me really learning a lot because I need to learn restaurant operations. I need to learn equipment. I need to learn if it's commercial. I learned that because as a part of the leadership team, the commercial acumen is there, but it's different when you manage restaurants, in whole greater Asia. So I would say spend a lot on building my technical know-how as part of the transition, but I also leverage my strength as a leader in terms of my skills on influencing, in terms of strategic alignment with franchisees. And it so happened I'm very fortunate that I have very strong team. So I think I also lean a lot on my team for support, and also, learn a lot from them. So I thought that transition, helped me. And I think I'm like doing well so far. I'm grasping things well. I'm 10 months in the job and I'm enjoying it a lot.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, Grace. So, very interesting question actually from Yojana on the transition. I think I want to add to that. It's kind of a connected question, but there's so many situations which come in front of us, which we are not ready for, but we got to make choices or decisions. In your case, Grace, when I look at your story, you made kind of those decisions not knowing what the future is going to be, whether it was your health situation, whether this transition in the career, not knowing what the future is going to look like, but you went in, and now there is increasing unpredictability in the environment, whether it's job or business and so on. So I think all of us are faced with that anxiety of, if something goes wrong, something doesn't work out the way I want, whether it's my job, my health, how do I deal with it? With your experiences and the kind of human you are, what advice do you have for our listeners?
Yeah, when I look at it, Atul, as well, right? Like I moved to different countries, and my first move probably is the toughest. I moved to China, in Shanghai, and I don't speak the language. And probably after the China experience, I would say all my moves are easier. But it's going there, right? With ambiguity. Like I don't know how it will work there, from living there to working there. But I think having an open mind, um, because maybe it comes from that passion I mentioned to you about learning. And then I would go back into my values. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I'm learning. I want to learn, because I have the opportunity to help others and make a difference. And I think, everywhere I go, I bring the fun. So I always go back, will I be able to do this and keep this, values that I have doing this job? So I always think about that. So I think then it becomes easier. You don't get scared. Like this will be fine. So whether it's an assignment or it's a situation, I would say, am I learning from this? Will I be able to help others, and will I enjoy this? So that has been my criteria. I think it has worked for me. So unknown for me is not an issue. I think we should be bold and try to do things that scare us at one point. Depends on the level of scare, or level our appetite for risk. But I would say, do something that will surprise you, not just surprise others, but surprise yourself as well. Because I'm sure, maybe sometimes we play it safe, and it's easy to play it safe. But I think the learning comes from doing something that you don't know. And yeah.
That's wonderful. And I think, Grace, there is this underlying deep sense of belief in yourself, which comes through in every choice, every decision you made right from your childhood, that you can make things happen. And I think that belief kind of continues or stayed through with you, which comes out in the face of those challenges or those situations. You make it sound easy, but I can tell you, being in those situations, it's not easy. It's not that straightforward. Those choices are tough. Those decisions are difficult. But then when you lean on your beliefs, who you are, what you believe in, things become relatively easier. I have some interesting questions coming up here. Anuj, why don't you go off mute and ask your question?
Thanks, Atul, and thanks so much, Grace, for being such an authentic and open leader in this forum and sharing your life story with all of us. The one piece that I noticed in your values page was helping others is bang in the center, and it looks like it's an integral part of your life. The examples that you shared of supporting communities and the graduates as well. I wanted to maybe ask you to share with us, how do you bring that aspect into your day-to-day work life? Because just this whole integration of what our personal sort of drives are, invariably would come in, and it would be great if you could shine some light on that for us.
Yeah. I think every day as leader, we have this opportunity to lead with heart. And I would say very simple as, are we listening better? Do we care about people that we work with? And for me, all the time, if someone joins the company, my first conversation is knowing the person. We want to talk about business. I ask the person about the person, and then I will also talk about myself. I think these are people we work with, and it's really important. And I can tell you, if you show vulnerability, people will show you also vulnerability. And you get more engagement and trust, I would say, by investing on, knowing people and really caring about them. So I would say, that's how I do it at work every day. So in YAM as well, I think globally they asked me to be a mentor or coach on leading with heart. And this is, coach who listens and care. So this is something really I'm aware and then conscious of, like, practicing. So when on my younger days, I can tell Atul this, I don't know whether Atul observed this. My listening skills was not good. I can tell you about that. I like to talk a lot. But later on, as a leader, I think I look at my ratio, like, am I listening more? Or am I talking more in my coaching session or conversations with people? So I think I'm in a better place now. Maybe 80% I'm listening and 20% I'm talking. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Great question, Anuj, and very nice response, Grace. This is a nice segue to my next question, Grace, for you. So, there's a lot of conversation or discussion about being human or humanity. How do we deal with people? How do we bring, that mindset, which you just explained to Anuj's question, to work every day? So you don't have to show up. You don't have to have those big statements which organizations put up on the walls.
Yeah.
To tell people how much do they care. It's every little action in every situation of those leaders, how they show up. So there's a lot of chatter on humanity in the businesses, but I truly believe it's not manifested in real actions of the leaders, many leaders. What's your sense on that? What organizations need to change, especially in the present context when I think people are hypersensitive to the human aspect of leaders? They want to connect with people. They want to feel them, walk with them, interact with them as human beings. But there is always this little kind of layer which comes in the way of that. So what do you think, wearing your chief operating officer hat now, organizations need to do differently?
Yeah, I think, I want to share something that YAM has been doing. And we have been doing this even before COVID. But during COVID, as you mentioned, Atul, this one was heightened, right? Caring about humanity. So we have this recipe for growth before. And then even before COVID, the company created a recipe for good. I think organizations, should have a purpose beyond profit. It's not just about making money. I'm sure there's more that we can do for the community. So when I talk about, recipe for good, our focus on the people and the planet, that has been the focus for YAM, in terms of giving back to the community, unlocking potential of people, whether our employees or people in the community or the minority. That has been the focus for us. So I think all organizations actually need to reflect, what is our purpose beyond profit? Why do we exist? Why do we exist? Not just for, of course, every business wants to make money, but there should be more than that. And I think more and more companies, I can see that, especially during COVID, are, coming up with their own purpose as well. So I've seen the trend, Atul. It's improving and it's good. Like we're having this conversation, and there are a lot of leaders in this room who can make that impact as well in their organization. So something really good to reflect on, because I think as individual we're making impact in a small way, but as organization, I think we can impact in a big way. So yeah, so we rely on the leaders around here, hopefully, to help us on that.
Very well said, Grace. In fact, the other fear I have is such an important and a topic very close to my own heart, is that there was a narrative which was all business and no people. So companies did, organizations did, or leaders did the lip service to saying the right talk, but not really doing anything about it. And then suddenly there is a lot of chatter on all people and no business. So my concern is that, is it one of those pendulum situations, when organizations are typically, or more than organizations, leaders are typically designed to react to a crisis. That's what they get paid for. That's what they get trained for. So now that there's a crisis, because people are expecting something different, everybody's talking about it. And then you go to one extreme, and then that goes away, then you come here. Do you see any of that happening? And if that's the case, how should organizations address it as a more sustained, more permanent change for the years to come?
Yeah, it happened to us as well, right? So we were extreme. We were all mostly heart-led culture. But then we say, but we need performance as well. So it's very people-oriented company. So it might be the opposite for other companies, which is high-performing organizations. Now we're talking about people to be heart-led. So I think we found that balance that we said that, it needs to be heart-led, high-performing kind of culture that we need to create, because we expect performance, but at the same time, we expect like how we're going to deliver those results is important, which is about heart-led leadership. So I think that is the balance. When we think about it, like even on the performance review we have in the company, Atul, I can tell you, it's not just performance rating, but we also have culture rating. So we have assessment. Are you leading the culture in the company? Are you leading the culture? Do you lack culture leadership? So it's not just about performance. When we say, are we serious about measuring how? And we said, yes, we're serious about measuring how. So we also have culture rating aside from performance rating. And that's the kind of conversation that we would have with people on a regular basis.
That's awesome. Before my next question, Grace, there are a couple of comments I want to read out for you. From Sam saying, thank you, Grace, for values-driven optimism. I think that's exactly the way, very nicely articulated, Sam, sir. And Lesego, great to see you on the call. Lesego says, thanks a lot, Grace, for such forthcoming leadership, touching and grooming others through your portfolio. So nice compliments here. So my next question is a little lighter one. There are a lot of talents, Grace, you have, which the world knows about. I for sure know about jiu-jitsu. I remember there was this joke in the office that you got to be very careful when you go to Grace and ask a tough question, whether you get a, what will you get in return? You don't know. So I know about jiu-jitsu. Tell me, are there any of those special talents which the world still has to discover about you?
Okay, Atul. So there's something that I'm fond of doing, and I like obstacle courses. So I actually go for Spartan race. I don't know whether you've heard about it. You guys can Google it later on, but I like that kind of race wherein you have like obstacle courses and all. And what I do, I actually train sometimes in the park here, just nearby our house. I would use the monkey bars, because one of the tasks there is make sure you can have like upper body strength and hang in the bars and all. So I can tell you, every time I run in the park, I would stop and go for one round of monkey bars hanging out there. But yeah, this is something fun that I do. And I would say you guys should try it. Try it as individual or teams. It's quite fun.
So we got a picture, by the way, with Grace on monkey bars. Maybe you can share with us later. That'd be fun.
I took a video of myself hanging in the.
That'd be fun. I'm, by the way, in Singapore a few weeks, Grace. I really want to see that. So that's wonderful.
If you go to Labrador Park at all, yeah, most of the mornings I will be there.
Yes. Great. Now, I, by the way, don't personally like this question, but I want to bring it up because it is relevant. I feel, because I've never experienced personally, but I know that people experience that, and I want to bring it up on the table. As a woman growing up in the corporate environment, Grace, did you feel any biases? And if you did, how did you deal with those?
Yeah, I think Atul, it's a mix of bias and unconscious bias. I would say there would be some meetings I felt like I was not heard equally. And, I have this idea and I spoke up. But seems like, it was just a sound that they heard. Then someone built on my idea and it becomes another person's idea. So I felt sometimes, just being heard equally is needed. So I felt, giving feedback to my coach before, we called our boss's coach. I said, there was this situation. I would still speak up after that meeting because I was not happy about it. And then what I do at all, so I think less of that I experience, but when I see it on others as well being done, I would call it out. Because I felt like, oh, there was one colleague, and I felt like this colleague was not listened to, and this person has a bright idea, but it's not equally heard. And I can tell you, Atul, sometimes maybe it's my accent or the other person's accent, but the listening, I think, includes intelligence, right? It's easy to listen to someone who sounds the same, but it's a bit maybe difficult to listen to someone who sounds different. So it's unconscious. I don't think it was intended. And I can tell you, sometimes I feel also boxed in many ways, whether it's about gender, and it happened even on function. So I was in HR before, and I would attend cross-functional meetings with our business partner. And I'm so used to asking random questions. Any function question I can ask about marketing, I can ask about development or operations. So I asked a marketing question. And after that meeting, I was given feedback by by business partner, or being asked, like, the team was asking, you're in HR, why are you asking marketing question? I said, why not? So sometimes people even box you on, how they want you to behave or how they want you to think. And I felt like, I don't know whether it's because one is your box as maybe it's, I don't know whether it's because of my function. Is there a gender, variable there as well? But the times I feel like, I'm being shut up, or they don't want me to talk, the more that I actually speak up to normalize things. I feel like this should be normalized. Like, anyone from any function should be able to speak. And in a very male dominant leadership team, I would go to Japan and Korea, and I would sit there and I'll be the only woman on the table. And I'm sure they're expecting me not to talk. And the more that I would ask questions and normalize things, that this is a conversation and you can have that conversation with me. So I think more and more we should normalize this. So people also will have that awareness that, this is how things should be. And there are things that are not acceptable.
That's so well said, Grace. And one point I want to add is there is so much focus on diversity, but there is a limited focus on inclusion and giving people space to express what they need to express, and that being open to accept that perspective. And I think what you said is a great insight for women for sure, but I think for everybody who doesn't feel included in those conversations through conscious or unconscious or subconscious biases. I think we can go on. It's a wonderful conversation. I just see a comment coming from Nyok. Nyok, why don't you call it out instead of me reading out for you? Nyok, you're on the call? Okay. So her comment is, Grace, that culture rating is an awesome idea. It emphasizes the weight of how leaders lead. And I agree with her comment. And I think organizations start to think about how do they balance it right. To your point, instead of going from one spectrum to another spectrum, it's finding it right and then creating an ecosystem or creating a process which allows it to streamline and sustain is the critical shift or change which needs to happen. So I think we are kind of coming to end of the hour. I do know, very thankful to the colleagues who are joining from India. It's the start of Diwali festivities, or everybody, by the way, who's celebrating Diwali. Happy Diwali to you all. Grace, I can't thank you enough for being with us today, because this was one of those conversations I was personally looking forward to. And yeah, you are who you are, and you give us a reason to believe that you can continue to pursue your passion. Who you are will help you to get to the point you aspire to be. So it was a great, great conversation. And thanks to all of you who joined for this session today. Very quickly, if you could, Sophia, bring up the slide. I want to introduce our next guest for LEH Dialogue, which will take place on the 17th of December. So we'll have another inspirational leader. Our focus is always to drive diversity in the kind of leaders we want to bring in, so who can continue to inspire us. So we'll have Lurel Ramirez, who's the head of United World College, UWC, Thailand. She's from the US, spent her life in Mexico, and then moved to Asia to create leaders of tomorrow who lead with character and capabilities. Amazing story of how in the school curriculum, they're building in this humanity aspect to bring up more wholesome leaders for future. So it'll be an engaging conversation. We will come out with the signups in next few days. So feel free to sign up for that. So with that, I really want to thank you for being there with us. It was a wonderful conversation, and all the best. Have a wonderful rest of the day and the weekend and Deepavali ahead.
Thanks, Atul. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.